Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Our guest today on the podcast has a new film coming out in 2025 that I'm sure most of our listeners have either heard of, and if they haven't, they'll hear about it now. It is going to be Wonders of the Wolf, and it's a film by an award-winning writer, director, and producer of two other films that you should all check out. They're available on Apple TV and Amazon, called Forever Faithful and Black Beauty Breed, and that is Angie Ruiz. Angie, it is wonderful to see you, wonderful to meet you, and happy to be your first podcast interview with us. Yes. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you, and thank you for being, I said this right before we started recording, just for being so open about coming on our show and to share the wonderful vision that you have for this film that's going to be releasing soon. I know you have a couple of test screenings going on now, some film festivals in the works, but it's always cool to see where you came from and how this filmmaking bug started for you. And it's always unique because you did these two films on Rottweilers, which we'll get into. But where did you grow up? Are you native Californian? Where was film production, all this stuff? Where did it come from for you, and how did you apply it as you grew up?
Yeah. First, thank you. I love your podcast. I listen to it all the time. So this is a real thrill for me to be talking to you guys. So I actually grew up in, two places. I was born in Shasta County, which I find so ironic that there's now wolves in Lassen, and that's really cool because I live not far from there. My dad worked for the Forest Service. So I lived there until I was about 10 years old. And then we moved down to the Monterey Bay area. But always around nature, for sure up in Redding, there's just the Shasta Trinity Forest that we spent a lot of time in. And my dad just was an adventure guy. And so we were always outside and outdoors. And yeah.
When you're talking about wildlife and being outside and outdoors, and a lot of people don't get the opportunity sometimes to grow up in a place like California where you can do so many things in a day if you really wanted to, but it's just so vast and so wild. Where was that? I know you said dad seemed to be a huge influence, but was that always a family thing, always going camping, being outdoors, all that type of stuff? Was that really like a major thing for you guys?
Yeah, when I was little, until I was about 10 years old, when we moved out to Monterey, not so much anymore, but up there for sure, we were always heading up to Oregon, like Klamath Falls, Mount Shasta. We used to chop down our own Christmas tree, which we don't do here in Santa Barbara. But I just have really great memories, but always spending time on the lakes. I remember the first time I saw deer. I don't know if you know this, but they swim across the lake at night when they're getting to one side to another part of land. I remember seeing that when I was little and just being amazed by it because we were on a houseboat in Lake Shasta. So yeah, but in terms of filmmaking, I didn't really get into it until probably early 2000s. I had lived and volunteered in Tanzania in East Africa and was working for an NGO there as a volunteer. And on the weekends we had time off, so the other volunteers we would naturally go explore. And I remember the first time I went to the Serengeti, and at that time I was into photography, but I became interested in wildlife kind of photography / filmmaking from that experience, spending time. And this is before YouTube and social media, everything. So this was really cool to just spend time watching a leopard sleep in a tree. And I was like, so I would take a lot of photos, but I really wanted to explore filmmaking, and that's where I got the bug.
And what was the first film-centric project you worked on, your transitional piece from photography, I guess?
Actually, well, at that time I was working, we had a project with the Maasai, the indigenous people in Tanzania. And I put together just on a regular DSLR camera, this little piece of the Maasai that I shared when I came back to LA. I was living in LA at the time. And people never been to Tanzania or had seen kind of the lifestyle that the Maasai live. They live, coexist with wildlife. And we had one Maasai leader who spent a lot of time in the safari hub of Arusha. So his English was pretty good. So he was able to articulate what that was like, what it's like living in an area where there's also lions and hyenas and all kinds of things. So that was it was just a small little short film that I really just showed friends and family in LA. And that was really what propelled, I was like, okay, I need to get more experience with cinematography. I need to get a better camera. But that's how it really started. And I did, at the time, maybe a couple years later, I formed my production company, Wandering Films. This was like 2008, 2009. And one of the first things I did was this little black and white featurette to support National Geographic's Big Cat Initiative. At that time, they had, they were kind of, the Big Cat Initiative was really about how, sorry, that's my dog. You know, wildlife in places like Africa were their land was being encroached on by humans. So it was just sort of this advocacy to get it out into the public that, the African savanna is starting to diminish. So I did something that was like one of the first things I did. And they were online. These were on YouTube, and it was just a small thing to support their initiative. And then from then on, that's how it all began.
When you look at storytelling alongside conservation or any sort of initiative that's close to you, like you said in Tanzania or working with Big Cat Initiative, why are those things so important to you as a filmmaker or a producer when anything that you get your passion behind? Why is it so important?
I've just always had an affinity for wildlife. Started when I was really little. And there was something when I was in Tanzania, I think just the experience in general, because at the time, I was living very close to all of these wild places and was really living the life that a lot of Tanzanians live. We didn't have running water or electricity. We had to take bucket baths, things like that. And there is something about living that way because for me personally, I was much more aware and being out and observing the wildlife there, I just really fell in love. I don't know how else to say it, but it was just a real sense of, I don't know, wonder, a real sense of connection. I'm not sure how to explain it other than I just, was incredibly passionate about wildlife and certainly the areas there.
So how does it feel to you that the art of filmmaking or photography becomes integral to actually making change? Like what does that mean to you?
I feel like film is an incredible way to tell. I think it's just incredible. It's a way that people can start to see things that they may not have in their personal life right now. I think film is an incredible tool for that. I think podcasts are too, by the way. But I feel like if there's anything, that you want to educate the public on, particularly in documentaries, I think documentaries are great tools for that.
So what's the sequence of events that kind of leads to not the storyline or just the setup for making a documentary? How do you know you have a good idea and one that you can actually fulfill? Do you know what I mean? Like how does it start on paper, and what point do you get it to and you say, all right, now I think I can make an actual film out of this. This is something we can do.
I would love to talk about Black Beauty Breed because that was my first feature documentary. I think it all comes, for me, a place of passion. I think making a documentary is not easy. There's a lot of research involved, and it's a lot of, calling people up. Can I interview you? But even to get those connections is tough, and there's a lot of travel involved, and it's just a really tedious job. So I feel like you have to be passionate about something. When I did Black Beauty Breed, though, we had rescued a Rottweiler, and I wanted it to be a successful rescue. And I was looking for anything to understand the Rottweiler breed more. And I couldn't find any kind of documentary, anything. But I did find a lot of books, and I did find a lot of things online that talked about their history as a working dog. They're actually descended from Swiss mountain dogs, which I don't think a lot of people are aware of. And they have more in common, say, for example, as other working dogs like the Husky, the Portuguese water dog, which I think a lot of people also don't know about. But some of their modern working abilities that I thought were so fascinating is their incredible therapy dogs and their incredible search and rescue dogs. They were at ground zero during 9/11 in the search and rescue efforts that turned into recovery efforts. So all of that was really important for me in the beginning, that kind of knowledge. And then I thought, okay, I would love the rest of the world to know that there are these facts about Rottweilers that aren't out in the public. And that was the beginning of telling that story, but really just because I loved my dog. And he was an incredible dog. And I wanted to change the image that they had in the media and talk more about their intelligence, talk more about their abilities as a working dog. So that's how that started. And from that kind of passion, I was able to work with and get so many incredible people in the Rottweiler world, particularly the people that were at ground zero that had Rottweilers during 9/11. I remember I did a cold call to a police officer that I found one photo of, and I called his station. He was retired, but they gave him my number, and I was able to connect with him. And I told him what I was doing. He's like, I'd love to be a part of it. And my crew, we flew to Montana. At that point, he was in Kalispell, and that was my first time to Montana. And it was his story that really, really was probably one of the most emotional, incredible stories that we were able to put in the documentary. But that's kind of how it starts. You have to be passionate, I feel like.
So you need to line up all these interviews and do all this research to get this right, obviously. So how much of it has to be done before you even start filming? So how much of it is developing on the spot versus sort of preliminary?
Well, I can even talk about Wonders of the Wolf. I had written down 4 names. I always start with a kind of vision board, and I write down what I would like to see. And with each documentary that I've done, what happens is I'll connect with somebody that I'm going to interview. My film crew will go there. From that interview, usually I've had situations where they just refer. They're like, oh my gosh, and you should talk to this person, and you should talk to this person. And so let's fast forward to now with Wonders of the Wolf. I had 4 names written down. Doug Smith was one of them. Bob Landis was another one. He's a wildlife documentary filmmaker. He's done some of the first wolf documentaries in Yellowstone back in the kind of like 2000, mid 2000s. And I had Rick McIntyre. And day one, when I finally got to interview Doug, I met all 3 of them that same day. And yeah, so it was I always feel like a vision board of some sort can kind of guide you. But that was really incredible. And I think that with documentaries, it's important to have some sort of vision board or storyboard or something. And then it just goes from there. I feel like you can be connected. And if people with your messaging, I feel like people, they want to help. They want to talk about the subject, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And there's so many similarities to what you're saying to how we worked our podcast early on. Is we did the same thing, right? You read a list and we had those list of names, and all of a sudden, like you said, those names refer other names, and now you're off to the races, and there's, it doesn't stop. Since we're on the subject of Wonders of the Wolf, because and we were discussing this prior to recording, there's so much wolf media, specifically film, coming to the forefront, it seems like in the next, I would say 2 to 3 years for sure. We've spoken with Ashley Avis, which we discussed, Ron Donovan doing his filmmaking and his exhibit now is at the Natural History Museum. There's another film depicting some of the stuff from Rick McIntyre's books, your documentary coming out. We spoke with Remy Newell. So it just seems like we're starting to saturate in a good way the wolf story and to get all these different perspectives. For you, as you said, the vision board, you had the names on the list. What was your ultimate, was there a line or 2 lines of you said, this is my vision for Wonders of the Wolf? If you even had the title at that point, what was that?
Yeah, so I did not have the title. I don't know if you watched, I sent you guys the trailer. At the end, there's a part where Doug talks about, he talks about the wonders of seeing a wolf. And that stuck with me. When I watched that presentation, we filmed it. That stuck with me. And I had some different ideas for a title, but that particular, when he talked about the wonder of seeing a wolf, I was like, oh, this has to be Wonders of the Wolf. And I also wanted it to be a very upbeat. I stayed away from a lot of controversy in this one. I really kind of taught my audience. I wanted it to be family oriented. I wanted kids be able to go see this film, which is already happening. So I think, and when we're talking about why there is a lot of wolf kind of interest right now, I think a lot of it is we've got these wolf packs in California, for sure, that are they're constantly in the news now, or maybe the things that I follow. But there's some curiosity for sure, and I also think with like books like American Wolf, which is there's a lot of people that have read that book because it reads such like a crime thriller. I think there's interest there as well. But I just feel like that even with the Yellowstone wolves, they're in the news a little bit more. So I think there's some curiosity there as well. What are you guys finding with that sort of interest? I mean, I'm sure you're finding even more people finding your podcast too, right?
For me, I mean, I can't speak for Stephen, but I think what we're seeing is that there's more of a general look into wildlife and biodiversity and the things that are affecting the planet a little bit more. And I think that has to do with the younger generation being so in tune to a degree. I think there's levels of interest, but more and more young folks are either watching nature documentaries or wanting to be outside hiking. Their parents are making a concerted effort to bring them to a museum, bring them to a sanctuary, go to a game, learning about their food, learning about where it comes from, learning about all of these types of things. I think there is a concerted effort in those areas, in those arenas. So I think that's part of it. I just also think that the wolf in general is a very captivating figure. And so as a species, when you look at it, I'm an animal guy. I've been it since I was a kid. So I could watch a documentary on orcas or foxes and it wouldn't matter. So I just think if you start early enough, it kind of catches hold and people want to listen to that stuff. And like you said, the fact of these names like Doug Smith now going around because he's retired, Doug having the freedom to share his knowledge, to go and bring people into big theaters where they can listen to him speak about this stuff is another thing I believe that just gives people an opportunity where they wouldn't normally have it. It's not a controlled setting anymore. So I think that's a huge benefit for people that are out there now. And like you said, California having wolves, totally a game changer as well.
Yeah. I actually, I think I mentioned before we started, I attended Doug Smith. He did a presentation and a talk with National Geographic in Santa Monica at the Broad Stage, and it was packed. And it was so interesting to see a variety of people just there interested in wolves. And I found that was super cool to see. And it was also great to see him in my neck of the woods. But yeah, I missed the exhibit though at the museum, but you said it's still there, right?
Yeah, the exhibit runs through June, so you got plenty of time to go check it out. Yeah, so you have a lot of time there. I want to talk about too, because you have this, I think, in the bio or something that I read too, that one of your daughters was also a big driver of this project, probably prior to when the project was a project. You know what I mean? I know you said your daughter was very into wolves, and she has a passion for it. I don't know if she still does, but how did that factor into you getting involved with this type of project and veering, you know, dogs and wolves obviously have the relationship of, you know, wild cousin to domesticated. So was this an easy transition for you to go from those stories of Rottweilers to now diving into their wild cousins and the people that study those animals?
Yeah. So my daughter, at first, I think kids are so pure. I have I've never met a child that's not connected to animals in some way. And with my daughter, she had an affinity for wolves that started when she was like a toddler. And we noticed this when we were in Montana. She's probably like 3 years old. And we walked into a store and there was a taxidermied wolf. And she beelined right to it and just sat next to it and was just kind of like had her arm on it and had this look in her eyes. And, it took us a while to move her away. And, I could tell that she was somehow, I don't know if it was, there was like a sadness. She was sad, and I wouldn't call it disturbed, but almost that there was this stuffed. For some reason, she recognized that. She was so little at the time. But from that time is when I started to notice that anything with a wolf on it, she wanted, whether it's a stuffy or a coloring book. As she got older in kindergarten, she would go to the library and check out anything on wolves. She was always doing wolf reports, and she was a wolf for Halloween. And it was funny because her teacher, where she said, it's really interesting that she has this real curiosity for wolves. And I said, I know. So it wasn't until 2020, when we had all of this time on our hands, that I finally sat down with her, because I thought, oh, this is a good time. Maybe I can find another documentary subject that I want to explore. Because at that time, I'd already finished Forever Faithful. And I was just, I was like, so I asked her, I said, what is it about wolves that you like? And she started to tell me about the dynamics of a wolf pack. She said, Mom, they're just like humans. There's a mom and a dad, and all of the kids and all of the aunts, they're always around, and they take care of, the pups and things like that. And so we started to watch some documentaries together. And I found one that, not Doug Smith, Bob Landis did, but Doug Smith is in it. It's called A Legend Returns to Yellowstone. And it was the first time that I was introduced to the Yellowstone wolves. And this is when it was like Wolf 21, and Wolf 42 and 40 and all of those wolves from I think it's what was the name of that pack? The Druid Peak pack? Do you know that one?
Druid Peak was 21, yeah.
21. Yeah, but 21 was with 42. Remember, that was his mate. And
Yep.
40 was the sister of 42. So anyways, that's what that documentary was about. And I was fascinated with it. And then an ecologist friend of mine recommended The Rise of Wolf 8 from Rick McIntyre. And I could not put that book down. And I ended up reading all 4 of his books. And at that moment, at that time, I was like, this is going to be my next subject. Now I have to go see the wolves. So I went to Yellowstone. I'd never been to Yellowstone before. I went to the Lamar Valley, and the first wolf that I ever saw in the wild was 907. And that was in early 2023. And at that point, I was deeply moved. And again, that passion, I just sparked that passion in me. I wanted to do something. I wanted to be part of the advocacy to educate and protect them. So, but I also knew that I needed to have the experts speaking about the subject. And that was very important. It's always been important. Even my previous 2 documentaries, it's always the people that are the experts on the subject speaking in my documentaries.
So from your documentarian brain, what was the thing or the storyline that jumped out at you that felt like a strong basis for a film?
I really wanted to tell the story of the reintroduction, and also wanted to tell the story of the current wolf packs. So I want to go from reintroduction to the current wolves. And I felt like with Rick McIntyre's books, there's a lot of history there of various different wolf packs, but I don't see a lot of the current wolves, 907. Let's see, there's the Rescue Creek pack, the Mollies. The Mollies now, I know they originally were the Crystal Creek pack, but now they're the Mollies. And I have all of those the packs in my film, but I have people like Kira Cassidy and Taylor Raby talking about them and their observations, and telling really wonderful stories and memories about them. So about some of the wolves. So that was really important as well. And again, the through line for this was always to introduce people to the Yellowstone wolves that wouldn't maybe have never been to Yellowstone, or people here in Santa Barbara for sure, and make it a family-oriented film, something that's hopeful and uplifting. That was important to me too, because I wanted to stay away from controversy. That was just important.
When you're making a film like this, because you made it obviously with Black Beauty Breed and Forever Faithful, and talking about that personal connection that you had with the people you're interviewing, how important is it to make sure that the people that are going to eventually be watching it have that same connection, especially with a film like this? Yeah.
Yeah, that's important for sure. I think that when we're putting together the film, particularly in the editing room, it's really important I feel like the stories of the wolves. Doug's really great at it. Taylor tells stories about some of her favorite wolves. Kira Cassidy gives beautiful memories of, say, for example, the '06 female. I think it's really important because stories, I think, are the way to connect people to the subject, and hearing what makes a certain wolf special, or abilities they have, or intelligence that they displayed, I think is important. And I'm finding with viewers right now in these test screenings, that's what they resonate with most. And then there's also really cool, like the bioacoustics that Jeff Reed is doing. That's really cool too. People find that fascinating. And, I think now that people know about it, they can look into the Cry Wolf Project and look into, he has a lot of videos on YouTube and things like that as well. So I think for me, it was just putting together something that is easy to understand, but facts, and with the actual people on the ground observing the wolves, was very important as well.
Yeah, that's always good to have the experts, as you said, sharing
Yeah.
their stories and sharing the information. That's always good. And yeah, Jeff is such an incredibly interesting individual. He's so cool.
I loved the interview with him. We were all, my film crew, we were just fascinated. We could have sat there all day listening to his work. The bioacoustics, and the camera that they use, he has this camera with like 4 little cameras on it. We were able to show that as well. It's so cool. So cool. I can't wait to see what they discover, in the coming months with their study.
Yeah. I mean, I know Taylor just posted, I think she'd finished with winter study, or her first bout of winter study. And it's always good to see their videos and stuff on social media. And to your point, when we were talking about this earlier, it's so different from when I would think the three of us grew up, is that everything was a memory that is locked in our brain. That's, if we maybe had a physical photo of something, or we got it, developed at a CVS or something like that, that was our memory. It wasn't on a phone, or it wasn't anywhere like that. So now that we have all this video and photography that's available on our phones, it opens up this new generation to, hey, you don't have to necessarily be at the place to see what's going on, but it might give you an incentive to want to go to these places. Are you hoping that's what this does, is that people, like you say, hear from Jeff Reed, hear from Kira, and they actually want to make the trip to Yellowstone to go see these wolves?
Absolutely. Or just be inspired to learn more about wolves in general. For example, I'm screening the film on Monday for middle school students. There's about 200 middle school students, teachers, and some parents as well here in Santa Barbara. And I had purchased from Yellowstone Forever two of Rick McIntyre's books plus American Wolf so that the library can have them, so that the kids, which they're already super interested, they have something to read and they can do their own research, and maybe they'll do a film someday as well. But I just think the most important thing right now is we have wolf packs here in California, and I feel like people here need to be educated just on wolf behavior in general. And I think this particular film will spark that curiosity and hopefully just show a different side of wolves.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about curiosity, that's one of the biggest things that Steve and I both learned, especially with the pack that we have at the sanctuary, is that curiosity is always opens the doors for any amount of things, right? Whether it's creating a podcast, starting a film, how do we interact with the wolves and wolf dogs on our site? And it opens all these different emotions and different things that you maybe never thought were there, or they're just unlocked in a different way. When you talk about the wolves that are here in California, now that this film is officially ready to go, is there possibly an ember there for you that has to get sparked to possibly do something about wolves that are now recolonizing California? Is that something you may be thinking about in the future now that you've done it with film? Okay, go ahead. Talk about if that's it.
Absolutely. I had to, well, first I have to go back to the Yellowstone documentary filmmaking. It's not easy to get there. First of all, our film crew from California to Yellowstone, but getting up with all that gear, hiking up with our gear, 4 a.m., it's sub-zero temperatures, the permitting that's involved. There's a lot involved in making any sort of documentary, particularly with national parks. But having done it, and this being more of a short documentary, it's not a feature length, I'm absolutely interested in exploring the avenue of doing something with the California wolves for sure. I've been to Sequoia National Park where there's a wolf pack there. I've spent a lot of time when I was young in Mount Lassen. But I feel like for me, it's kind of full circle that there's a pack in Mount Lassen. That's where I grew up. So yeah, there's definitely an interest there, but I would have to just get out there and speak to the people I know there's researchers there now, but that are on the ground there as well, doing the day-to-day observing or whatever they're doing. I still need to understand how they fit in and what they're doing. And are they there daily, or do they have cameras, or how are they observing the wolves and keeping track of these wolf packs?
Yeah, no, that's going to be exciting stuff. Jumping back to Wonders of the Wolf for a minute here, was there ever, I'm sure there were many, but was there a moment that sticks in your mind with your crew, and kudos obviously to your crew to be, being on board to doing all this stuff. And I those are people that, maybe not everybody knows until the credits roll, but the crew really does an incredible amount of work.
100%.
Yeah.
I am 100% grateful to my crew. And I hired a cinematographer from Bozeman. His name is Warren Commerce. He was also a cinematographer on Molly's Pack. He did some of the interviews in that film. I'm going to go see that film in Jackson Hole on January 9th. It's going to be there and then at Bozeman. But he was also, and again, some of the people in Molly's Pack are also my film. So, but it was very important for me to have some of the crew from Montana that had this experience, because it's not easy work. But they knew what they at least knew the area. They understood how to be, we're in the mountains, and a lot of times there's no cell service. So we had to have, all of our cameras had to have multiple batteries, things like that. They just had to be prepared for that, and they were. And so I am 100% grateful to them. I give them so many shout outs on everything.
Like you
awesome.
said, this kind of filming is wildly difficult. Do you remember the most challenging day of filming,
Oh my gosh.
or
I'm
is
trying
just
to think.
a blur?
It's a little bit of a blur, but I do remember one particular day. We were out in the park, probably around 5 a.m. And we were with somebody called Quinn Harrison. He's a biologist in the park as well. And thankfully he was the one that was with us most of the time that we were filming. And they had gotten word that the mollies were visible. Now the mollies pack is they're not a pack that's seen very often, but they were out. And so we had to hike up this very steep hill with all of our gear in freezing cold weather. And we had to station and just wait because they were around. They had been seen. We had the scopes out. We had our lenses out, but we had to wait. And we finally did see them after a while. And then we had to follow them because they were not in one place. So then we had to get back in the vehicle and follow them. They're heading this way. So that was, but it was also some of the best footage that we got because we actually got most of the pack, I believe, and they're expert bison hunters, and we got to film them kind of doing what they do, coursing as they do. And Kira explains this very well in the film. They're coursing predators. So we have all of that footage. And so it was worth it, but it was definitely difficult.
Wow.
So that's an interesting thing. I never thought about that. So you have a biologist that's kind of your
Yeah.
go-to person. How does that kind of work out? You just coordinate that with the park, or how does that work that you have like a biologist assigned
Yeah.
to you?
So this is also, again, some of the research. I found Nathan Varley. He has a company called Wolf Tracker. Are you familiar with Wolf Tracker? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
great. So he has a company called Wolf Tracker. He's the first person that I called and emailed with and told him what we were doing, had to get my permits. And he said, I'm going to put you with Quinn Harrison and we will get you guys out to see the wolves. Because it was one of those things that putting the budget into getting out there, I needed to make sure that, we were going to see wolves. And the best way to do that was working with somebody like Nathan and his company, Wolf Tracker. And Nathan also connected me with Doug Smith. That's how I got the Doug Smith interview. So Nathan, I'm very grateful to him.
Yeah. Nathan's an awesome guy. He's really, really cool. I don't think I asked this of you. What was your experience like when you saw a wolf for the first time in the park?
Oh, 907F was the first one of it that I saw. That was in early 2023. It was very emotional. It was very emotional. It was a wild sense of wonder. Just, I was amazed. I'd never seen a wild wolf before. And from 907, we saw a couple of the other members of the Junction Butte pack. And I think she had just given birth to the one surviving black pup, who I think is over a year now. But that was incredible. And I was deeply moved by that. But through this film and going back every season, we were there spring, summer, winter, and fall, got to see multiple wolf sightings and got to hear them howl as well. That was very emotional for me. I think myself and another crew member had tears when we heard the howling. It's all moving. And I hope that this film gives people that may not have the opportunity to go out there just to experience that.
I mean, if there's anybody listening to this too, and I think it's so important what you describe as the things that have to be done prior to creating a film like this and having the right people involved. And
it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a tip or something that you would give to maybe a filmmaker who's listening or somebody who's in the middle of a project and maybe they're banging their head against the wall, what's something that Andrew Ruiz would say to somebody who's maybe stuck or wanting to start something like this?
I would say do your research for sure. Do your research. Make sure you have the right people that can help you tell that story. Particularly in Yellowstone, I would say definitely make sure you have the right people, the actual biologists that are on the ground, the researchers on the ground. And then if you want to see wolves, I would highly recommend connecting with either a biologist there or connecting with someone like Nathan Varley, who has Wolf Tracker. That way you have a better chance of seeing the wolves. I know some people that can follow along, they can drive down the Lamar Valley and kind of see where the wolf vehicles are. But I feel like if you're going to put, your budget, and you have a budget and you want to make the best use of that budget, I think it's important to get the greatest chance of seeing wolves. And by doing that, I think it's connecting with a biologist or someone like, Nathan.
Yeah.
So just on another logistical thing, so being that wolves are so difficult to film a lot of times,
Mhm.
and it's hard to get a lot of it, did you start with B-roll, or did you start with interviews and then try to fill in the narrative with B-roll, or how did that work in this particular context?
So, for example, every time we went, we were only there for maybe 4 to 5 days. And there was always a scheduled interviews. And then there was days that we would just do B-roll. And we had to get those particular permits as well. You have to be very specific on your permits in Yellowstone. You have to carry your permit with you at all times. So it was a combination of both. We'd have a B-roll day, we'd have an interview time, and then we would have the wolf time. And when we always, like Quinn Harrison was our guy. So we would always be in the car with him. We knew where the wolves were, and that's how we would get the footage of the wolves. So yeah, and in my film, there's we have the Rescue Creek Pack, we have the Mollies, we have 907, members of the Junction Butte Pack, and we have photos that were contributed of wolves that are no longer here. And then I connected with Bob Landis, and he's the one who generously allowed me to use that little clip of the real '06. To me, when he sent that to me and I saw her alive, I was so moved. I still am so moved. And I feel so fortunate that I get to have the real '06 in my film. And Kira, she talks about, she has a beautiful memory of her. And so that's part of her portion of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Was there anything you took back from talking with Bob or Rick or Doug that specifically stuck with you in terms of either filming logistics or just in terms of the project overall about wolves?
Well, when I interviewed Doug, I felt like he was so open to talking about what wolves mean to him. And I think that was very moving. That kind of stuck with me. Wolves never give up. This is a quote from him in the film. Wolves never give up, no matter how hungry they are, how hurt they are, what the odds are against them. They keep going to the end. That's his quote. That really stuck with me. And I feel like Bob Landis, it was just fun to chat with him. At the time, he was doing a film on ravens. And it was just really fun to just chat with him about wildlife filmmaking in the park. He's up every day though with his camera, so he has a lot of incredible footage. And with Rick, I shared a scope with him. He pointed out some wolves. It was just fun to see him in action after reading about him and reading his books. And I didn't have a ton I didn't have a lot of conversation with him, but I did get to share a scope with him, which was very nice.
I feel like sometimes that's like his way of conversating, is sharing the scope. It's kind of unique to have somebody who's been there for that long and doing that work. It's pretty wild.
And by the way, every time we knew Rick was there, we knew, our film crew, we were in the right spot.
Yeah.
Working on a book about 907F. So we would always see him when we were filming the Junction Butte Pack, and he was always there. We're like, we're in the right place.
That's wild. Did you ever think, this just popped in my head with your film also, because you have these generational folks that in a way you have this story of reintroduction to now. Did you ever think, or did you have in the back of your mind, that this is the changing of the guard from Doug and Rick and those folks who really got this started to now the Kiras and the Taylors and everybody else?
Oh, 100%. Yes, absolutely. And it's fun to see all of, so in terms of interviews, I have Doug Smith, Kira Cassidy, Taylor Raby, and Jeff Reed. And then I also have another part of the film that I was able to, is really important to me to understand the ranchers around Yellowstone. There's a particular organization, I don't know if you've heard about it, called the Tom Miner Basin Association. And they are, it's a wonderful organization because they're helping ranchers learn non-lethal ways of managing wildlife around them, things like range riding and things like that. And so I was able to talk to the founder of the Tom Miner Basin Association. She's in the film, and she talks about why they believe it's important to have an intact ecosystem, and they want to work within that. And that's why they're doing the things that they're doing to advocate for, they think having an intact ecosystem is good for plants, it's good for the earth, it's good for the soil, it's good for the animals. And that was a really important part to get in my film as well. And I'm happy that I do have that, because it's new knowledge, particularly for people here in California. We have a lot of ranchers here as well, and they are already creating a little bit of, I wouldn't say, how do I say this? They're concerned about wolves returning to California. But I think hopefully we have a lot of ranchers here in Santa Barbara County. And I feel like just getting her point of view about how having an intact ecosystem is important, I think it's going to be one of those things that's going to be very helpful with getting that kind of knowledge to the ranchers here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what was so wonderful to see on the wolf welcoming day that was at the museum, is that all of these conversations seem to have already started or are kicking into fairly high gear of talking with everybody who's involved. Stakeholders are involved in terms of whether it's ranching, wildlife, research, all of it, especially in the state. When you have a pack or packs that are recolonizing, obviously you want to make sure that everything's in place to be able to help everybody who's involved.
And I also think these peaceful conversations, talking about solutions versus, I think that's one of the reasons, Jeff talks about that in the film. The bioacoustic effort is about finding solutions instead of just yelling back and forth. And the bioacoustics that they're using inside the park, but also outside the park, and which I think is really cool too.
Yeah. For anybody who's listening, Angie, because you have, I don't know, have you been accepted into the Santa Barbara Film Festival? We're still waiting on that.
So I have, so that January 10th, I'll hear from Santa Barbara Film Festival, but it is an official selection for the Idlewild Film Festival, which is March 4 to 8. So I'm actively getting responses from festivals as we speak. The majority are going to come in January. But for now, I'm getting opportunities to screen the film here in Santa Barbara.
Awesome.
That's great.
So anybody who's interested on keeping up to date with any of that, I know your website just launched, wondersofthewolf.com, for those of you that are listening, for anything else. Is that where people can go to find out where it's being screened? Are you posting social media? Give everybody avenues to where they can keep up to date on where they can catch this.
Definitely. wondersofthewolf.com is the official website, and we'll have screening updates there. And then we have Instagram at Wonders of the Wolf, putting together the Facebook page. I haven't done that yet, but working on all of this stuff. There's so much social media now.
I know.
I know. It's like just getting the film done, and now it's like the social media aspect of it.
Oh man. So we go there. All right. So anybody who wants to take a look at that, obviously we'll have the website in the description, and, just follow and make sure that everybody's keeping tabs on when this stuff is out. And obviously we will post when there's things, it's been selected. And so we'll let everybody know about that. My last question for you, Angie, is when you hear the word wolf, what's the thing that comes to your mind?
Wonder.
So awesome. I mean, I looked at the trailer. I can't wait to see the rest of the film. And I'm sure I'll be at one of these festivals in California to see it. Yeah.
Yes, you guys are more than welcome. You can come as my guest. So just let me know.
Absolutely.
And we hope to make a trip to Wolf Connection as well.
Yeah. I mean, listen, our doors are always open. So you let me know when you want to come, and we'll make it happen so you can meet our pack of 46 right now. It'll be cool.
Oh,
that'll be awesome.
I would love that.
Totally. Andrew Ruiz.
Thank you so much for having me. So much fun.
Absolutely. So wonderful. Can't wait to see the whole film. Hang on while we sign off. Hal Steele out there. We'll be with you next time. Bye, everybody. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.